Late one monsoon evening in a small forgotten village on the edge of the forest, where broken houses leaned like tired old men and the wind always seemed to whisper secrets, a young schoolteacher named Rohan arrived to take his new job at the village school. The villagers welcomed him politely, but their eyes carried a strange fear whenever the name of the old abandoned puppet theater was mentioned. A crumbling wooden building at the end of the village road that once belonged to an old puppeteer named Babalal, who had died mysteriously many years ago. And although Rohan ignored the warnings at first because he was educated and believed such things were only superstitions, the story began on a night when the electricity went out and the village fell into darkness, the rain tapping softly on the windows while Rohan sat reading a book, when suddenly he heard a faint wooden clacking sound outside his door, like pieces of wood hitting each other slowly. And when he opened the door he saw nothing but the wind moving the trees, yet the sound came again, tack-tack-tack, like puppet strings being pulled. And from the corner of his eye he noticed a small wooden puppet lying on the ground near his doorstep, a puppet dressed like a bride with painted red lips and black glassy eyes that seemed strangely alive. Rohan picked it up with confusion and muttered softly, "Who left this here?" But there was no answer except the wind. The next day he asked the villagers, but the moment he showed them the puppet their faces turned pale and an old woman whispered trembling, "Throw it away, Beta, that puppet belongs to the cursed theater." Rohan laughed lightly and replied, "It's just a toy, why are you all scared?" But the old woman grabbed his wrist and said with watery eyes, "That is not a toy, that is Mira." And when Rohan asked who Mira was, the villagers slowly revealed a heartbreaking story that many years ago Babalal the puppeteer had a daughter named Mira who loved puppets more than anything. She would sit beside her father and help him perform shows, making children laugh with her sweet voice and cheerful songs. But one night during a storm the theater caught fire while Babalal was drunk and asleep, and little Mira was trapped inside surrounded by burning puppets hanging from the ceiling like screaming shadows. People said her cries echoed through the village, "Papa, please save me. I'm scared. Please don't leave me." But Babalal was too late, and by the time he broke the door the flames had swallowed everything. After that night Babalal lost his mind and kept saying Mira was still alive inside the puppets. He spent his last years talking to them, feeding them, crying in front of them, until one day he was found dead in the theater surrounded by dozens of puppets staring silently at him. And from that day strange things began happening in the village as people heard wooden footsteps at night and sometimes saw a small puppet moving on its own, whispering a child's voice saying, "Papa, I'm still here." Rohan listened to the story but still tried to stay logical, though a chill crawled down his spine. He returned home that evening and placed the puppet on his table, telling himself it was only a piece of wood. But that night he woke up suddenly when he heard a tiny voice in the darkness softly crying, "Papa, where are you?" His heart pounded as he switched on the lamp and saw the puppet now sitting upright facing him, even though he clearly remembered leaving it lying down. His throat went dry and he whispered nervously, Who is there?" And the puppet's head tilted slightly as if someone invisible had pulled its strings, the glass eyes reflecting the yellow lamp light. Then a faint whisper came again, "Papa, why did you leave me?" Rohan jumped back in terror and shouted, "Stop this! Who is playing tricks?" But the room was empty and the door was locked. Trembling, he ran outside into the rain and decided to return the puppet to the abandoned theater the next day, hoping it would end the nightmare. But when morning came he found the puppet sitting beside his bed again, even though he had thrown it outside the previous night. Panic began growing inside him, yet something strange also pulled him toward the old theater. And that evening he walked down the muddy road toward the dark building whose broken windows looked like hollow eyes watching him. The door creaked open with a long groan and inside the air smelled of dust and burned wood. Dozens of old puppets hung from the ceiling by tangled strings, swaying slowly as if breathing. Their painted smiles faded and cracked, and in the center stood a small wooden stage covered with ash. Rohan stepped forward nervously, holding the puppet in his hand, and whispered, "I don't know what you are, but I'm leaving you here." But suddenly the door slammed shut behind him and the puppets began moving gently, their strings tightening and loosening though no one was there. The wooden clacking filled the room, tack, 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 and a soft childlike voice echoed through the theater. "Papa, you came back." Rohan's eyes widened in horror as the puppet in his hand slowly turned its head toward him and its mouth opened slightly while the voice continued sadly, "Why did you leave me in the fire? It was so dark. I was so scared." Tears of fear filled Rohan's eyes as he stammered, "I'm not your father, please leave me alone." But the voice cried louder, trembling with pain, "Everyone says that, everyone leaves me." And suddenly all the hanging puppets dropped to the ground at once with a loud crash and began crawling slowly toward him like broken soldiers, their wooden limbs scraping the floor, whispering again and again, "Don't leave me, don't leave me, don't leave me." Rohan backed against the wall, screaming, "Stop! Please stop!" And in that moment he saw a small shadow standing on the stage, the faint shape of a little girl made of smoke and ash with glowing sad eyes. She looked at him with heartbreaking loneliness and whispered softly, "Will you stay with me, Papa?" Rohan felt tears run down his face as he shook his head and said gently, "I'm sorry. I can't." And the shadow's expression slowly changed from sadness to quiet rage as the puppets around him lifted their heads together and the theater filled with the sound of snapping strings, the girl's voice turning cold as she whispered, "Then you will never leave." The lamp hanging from the ceiling flickered wildly, and the last thing Rohan heard before everything went dark was the wooden clacking echoing again and again through the empty theater while a lonely child's voice whispered through the darkness, "Now you will play with me forever, Papa, forever."